Their newest tank, the Centurion. The plan was to give them trials in battle. They never got an opportunity to do that because the war and the fighting ended before the Centurion could actually see combat. By the time of Korea, the Centurion, with a 20-pounder cannon, was up to the Mark III variant. The Mark V variant was used by the Australians in Vietnam, and it was also sold in large numbers to the Israelis. Continual modifications were made to the tank. Eventually, the 20-pounder gun was changed to a 105 NATO standard L7 gun, like you see right here. This is one of the last variants of the Centurion. It's from the British Army. This would have been in service around the late 70s, early 80s, before being replaced by the Teachins and later the Challenger tank. We actually have a couple of these in our museum collection, one from Britain and one from the Swiss Army.
Close your eyes.
Used by a number of European armies, including James, Norwegian, right alongside the large vehicle. It's been in service for a long time because it's big enough to outgun and get to the 105. They never managed to put a 120 in it. But it is still a very, very good tank. The South Africans modified their Centurion with extra armor. They had something called the Oliphant. The Israelis were users of the Centurion, and they continue to use it today not as a gun tank, because it's kept up to being hauled, they converted it to various kinds of combat engineer vehicles like the Puma, the Natpagan, and the Nickel set, which is basically a monster. The Nickel set has a conning tower on the top of it and allows the Israeli soldiers behind bulletproof glass to maintain observation posts. Tower on the thing is smaller than the turret that you see here on the front page. I love this tank just because it has that big Centurion in Vietnam. In addition to the gun tank, there was also a version called a combat engineer vehicle that had a short 165mm howitzer. It also carried a bulldozer blade, destroy bunkers, and knock out fortifications. This is a classic post-war tank. It saw a lot of service. One of the last users within the British Army was the Hong Kong garrison. They had a number of these in Hong Kong. There's been a couple movies recently too where they used Centurion. Put all kinds of plywood, steel, and aluminum around the outside of it to make them look like F-1 tanks. They're actually playing with modern tanks. The 105mm gun is a very good gun. It has excellent sight. It's one of those tanks you can lock onto a target and sit underneath, literally keep the gun right on the target. Centurion has been replaced, as I said. Originally, it was cheaper than Challenger 1 and the Challenger 2 with the British Army. Those tanks all have 120mm cannons. And that's pretty much the standard Western tank gun right now, the 120mm. Well, we have one from Abrams, one from a Leopard. most modern Russian tanks are only a 125mm gun.
From here to like that other pole right over there.
That are considered current use the 120mm gun. This is 105. Tanks that were actually in service in the United States and Vietnam had 20 pounders. Now I mentioned that one of the users of the Centurion was the Swedish Army. They didn't use a lot of them, but they had a few. They mainly used them on some of the coastal islands. And after they retired a lot of their Centurions, they kept the turrets, mounted them, holding stands right in the rocks to serve as pillboxes, continued coastal defense. Over here, you're going to get to see the tank that for many years was the Swedish main battle tank. And it is kind of radical because it doesn't look like anything that most people think of as a tank. On top of one of our two S tanks, the Swedish S tank. I'm fond of this tank for personal reasons. My uncle built a model of this when I was 6 years old. I'm now 50 and really it tanks. So I got to blame my uncle for getting me into this. I thought the S-tank was one of the coolest things in the world. It doesn't have a turret. Some people even say, that means it's not a tank. Well, the Swedes used it as a tank in any event. The S-tank is unique because instead of a turret, what you do, raise or lower the suspension to aim the gun up and down. Left and right, that's up to the driver. You're just shifting left or right. And it technically can work with a crew of 3 men, a commander, a driver, and basically what they refer to as a technician, not a loader. It doesn't need a loader because it has an auto loader. In an emergency, the tank can work with 2 men or even 1 man. If it's got its driver, it's got its gunner, and it's got an auto loader, so it can technically work with 1 man. If you look on the side of the tank, you see a bunch of things that look like plastic gas cans. They are plastic gas cans. But it carries diesel fuel with a Detroit engine. The diesel fuel has a low flash point, so actually that serves not only as spare gasoline or spare fuel, diesel fuel, but it also offers a degree of protection for incoming rounds. High explosive rounds will technically detonate, usually destroying the gas can, but usually not penetrating the armor. You'll notice also as this thing comes around, there's a fence on the front. That is bar armor. It also serves to detonate high explosive rounds, hollow charges.
Can you make a picture of Alan Ford to go to the hangar?
And Alan Kors, if you would go to the hangar, please, Mr. Alan Kors, if you head on over to the hangar. Now, this tank technically is amphibious with a preparation time of 15 minutes with a skilled crew. I guess we're not that much of a skilled crew because it took us almost an hour to make it amphibious. You see it rocking up and down. That's how it aims its gun. And what you'll notice is that this thing can keep its gun on the target fairly easily, even though it doesn't have a turret. Up above where he would normally sit. It has its own bulldozer blade in the front. It can dig its own defensive position. It can also go very fast because in addition to the Detroit diesel engine, it also has a turbine. An aircraft turbine, which Caterpillar actually manufactures some of them under license. I can't remember Lockheed would actually define that turbine. It's an aircraft turbine engine. When it really wants to cruise.
Like right now?
I like right now. In spite of its bolts, when it's down at the far end of our field down there, coming toward us, it's quiet and it's very low to the ground. This is the C variant of the S-Tank. There was the A, the B, and the C variant. The final variant here. In addition to the cannon, it also has two machine guns mounted in a box on the front of the hull. There is a tube, basically an aluminum folding box that is also inserted into the engine when the screen is raised that keeps the fumes from gathering within the confines of the canvas that's wrapped around the vehicle, and it keeps the fumes from basically suffocating or overcoming the crew. When you turn on the turbine and leave it on for a few minutes, it's a little bit like an M1 tank. You can fry an egg on its deck. When we first got these tanks, we actually got 3 of them. One had a working gun. ATF doesn't let us keep tanks that have working guns. We have to cut the breech and re-weld the breech so that it can never be used again. But that allows us to keep the correct weight of that gun. The one that had the working gun, that went on to Fort Knox, and I believe now has actually been moved to Fort Benning. We actually took some of our guys, went to Sweden. I wasn't one of the lucky ones that got to do it, but the Bofors factory actually let our guys drive the tank. Volvo engineers were there, and they got to cruise around in the mud, and I've got some videotape of it. It's incredible. The thing is actually very, very, very maneuverable. We're lucky to have 2 of these vehicles in our collection. And ultimately, like so many other countries in Europe, they've gone to the German Leopard, although the Swedes manufacture under license their own version, and honestly, when you look at the Swedish version of the Leopard 2, it looks a little different than the German one. It's got some pieces and parts on it that are very uniquely Swedish, and it's probably one of the best tanks in Europe right now. For many years, this was the height of innovation in armor. This was something radically different. Everybody kind of looked at the Swedes and said, you know, that's not exactly what we think of as a tank. And the Swedes' attitude was, well, if the Russians come, we're just going to shoot down the road, knock them out, and let the chips fall where they may. This was never exported to any other country. Several countries did actually experiment with it, though. One was sent to England, one was also sent to Australia, and the U.S. even considered the tank for a while back in the days before the MBT-70 and its interesting design history. So we're thrilled to have 2 of these S-tanks in service right now here in our museum. We hope you enjoyed seeing those. A couple of examples there, the Centurion and the S-tank, Cold War history.